3, 2, 1.
Very hard to do in Los Angeles right now as an art major, as an artist.
It seems to me that often, because I mean there's lots of very talented artists and not everyone kind of makes it, even to the extent that they can live off their art. And it seems to me often the big deciding factor is when you get someone like Kerry with you who kind of champions your art, you know, who kind of recognizes something, you know, that makes the difference, I think.
It does, because it kind of like, yeah, it's just another sort of another energy that adds to what you're doing. It doesn't take it away. You know, it's not draining or anything. It just adds to a kind of a momentum, and it kind of just, you just have to just let it go or let it happen and unfold. You know, so it is like that was the great thing. That is the great thing about showing with Kerry, is that although I've maybe the last few years I've kind of stepped back a bit and been a little bit more quiet, you know, in terms of the showing front, it was only a matter of time before I just started to find my feet again and just start making bodies of work, you know, kind of, yeah.
You've got a very recognizable painting style.
Yeah, and that's what people say, but I don't.
Yeah, really?
I find it, you know, I find it strange because I don't necessarily sort of like view it that way.
Yeah.
Or it's never been a conscious.
Yeah.
It's. I can see how it's formed over the years.
Yeah.
Certain things have happened at certain points, and just through repetition and constant sort of work, you know, certain things stand out and a lot doesn't. So there might be a 2-year period where like you don't think you've learned anything, but then one day something might just occur and you go, well, I'm going to just consciously take that.
Yeah.
And then learn how that happened.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's almost like you kind of produce, and then go back, reassess, go, okay, what was successful?
Well, it's difficult to kind of deny when something when something stands out that sort of you'd never done before, and it becomes sort of like this unnerving addition to what you've done. It was kind of, I realised that they're the little things that I should keep and discard all the rest. So over time, it was like, when I went back and saw those little episodes or incidences, they kind of over years formed how I paint. Everything else was discarded, and I just kept, you know, it was like finding things and then reconnecting them over time. And I guess the whole thing was to find a way of working that remained really open and like stylistically or technically or whatever, like was very fluid, which was sort of something I guess became aware of when I was at art school, because it showed me it was very easy to get comfortable with a certain way of working and then just sort of pitch your tent and then camp there for fucking ever.
Yeah,
and that's
a lot of people do that.
Yeah, and I thought, you know what, that's like, you don't want to be dead on the vine, you know.
Yeah. And
I needed something or a way of working that could, like, it was sort of parallel to how I lived and how I worked, like how it kind of grew with me, or it was sort of, things were equally sort of joined. And it meant that my experiences or things that I was exposed to, like randomly or just in my everyday sort of environment, I could just tap into. So it's kind of not like I don't have a particular sort of theoretical or conceptual framework that I'm working in, because it's sort of more, it's more fluid than that. Like I can't I just didn't want to be. Well, I kind of believe that a painting, you know, I don't want to be a preacher, or I don't want to have a particular sort of message or anything in my work. Like, I want it to be as open for me as it is for a viewer or someone to come and bring their own story, or they associate whatever they want to it. And I think that was something that I was always sort of unconsciously working towards, like dissolving certain fixed notions of what painting was, or should have, or has to be, you know.
So, to what extent is the actual doing, you know, a thinking process? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess if anything, you know, that's the conceptual nature of painting. It's almost innate in the practice of it. So So I've sort of, when I'm going through the painting, when I'm in the painting process, it's sort of, I guess it's sort of one of those, it's like an arena where you are kind of, you've got one eye sort of in the world and your other eye is kind of focused and sort of geared towards what's happening in that, on the painting or with the image that you're working with. But it kind of, if things sort of start to interlock, or there's a kind of a weird, I'm not saying, not in a mystical sense, but you know when something is, you're engaged in it, when you kind of don't have to think about it. Although it's sort of like a part of your consciousness that's hyper alert and there's a hyper clarity, but it's difficult to find in any other medium. I can't do it. I mean, I'm sure when I look at other things, I can see other artists' work, like, you know, video or film, or even people who cook, or like there's a kind of a clarity. Like Kerry has that as someone who installs work. There's a clarity in and a crispness that in the approach that gives the thing life. Like it's sort of, you know, like there's it kind of has an energy. You kind of, they're putting energy into what they're doing, and it sort of stays, it's sort of locked in this capsule. And in some ways, like with me painting, that's sort of what happens, I think. It sort of doesn't, I don't want to have something that's overworked. And I mean, I did paint, a lot of early work was very laboured and it looked very sort of stodgy, or like you'd kill it.
Kind of overcooked or something.
Yeah, overcooked. It was like, they were just like overbaked cakes, you know, and it just looked wrong. And you could sort of smell the burnt crust, and it was just like, no, that's not like, but that's kind of like takes a long time to kind of reduce things down to like very bare essentials that combine, and that you can, you know, alternate between things. And that, I think that was, you know, I've looked at a lot of painting, and I've responded to paintings in the past and even now that kind of have that flexibility.
It's almost like a subtractive process in a way. Like you're actually, it's a process of taking away.
Yeah, well, it's a process of not even, well, it was a process of taking away, like conceptually and reducing things, but now it's a process of just starting off with what I have and not overdoing it.
Yeah. Just
sort of let it like do, and you know, not having any kind of moral, or like not judging it, because it's not really, it's not that kind of activity. Like, you know, I'm not hurting anyone, doesn't matter what I paint. Like, you're not sort of, it's sort of, I don't want to get my sort of, I don't want to have a moral, I don't want to justify, or I don't need to validate painting. It's, you know, like, and I just think that sort of, when you feel that you have to, it's kind of when you start clinging on to kind of a certain dogma, because that's what you think defines what you do. But I think when you're creating something, to me, that that simple act is a sort of important, just as an act, as a sort of breathing is, or it has to happen on its own, and it has to be allowed to be what it is. Like, you know, painting's just a part of that.
And I think that's why it takes time. That's why it's a slow process.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you look at paint. I mean, I really love like Luke Toyman's work, but the thing is, I find it sort of. I think I didn't like. I responded to his paintings, and I remember he gave a talk at the National Art School.
Yeah.
And I went and saw it, and I said hello to him, and he was pretty, you know, like direct, and his talking was pretty well informed. His paintings are really well informed, and but I found over the time that they were sort of they weren't sort of free enough. There was too much meaning, or when he spoke, there was too much sort of added. There was too much language attached to it. Yeah. And I just didn't really care about that. I liked sort of an aspect of. I liked his impulse, or his intuitive sort of. Like what he was sort of doing and saying, and what was I liked his interests. Yeah. But to kind of bog a painting down with meaning, to me was like, and it still is. It just, to me, it just kills it. You know, like you can still be interested in depicting like the trauma of Holocaust survivors or something in your work, but I don't want to be the one giving the lecture on and speaking on their behalf on what that trauma is within this painting, because it's just not. It's not the terrain I feel comfortable in. Yeah, I suppose it's about trying to let, to some extent, the painting speak for itself, which was not a very popular idea, you know, probably around the time you and I went to art. No. Yeah. And I think there's that whole, like when, you know, I think it was the 90s or early 2000s when people were saying painting is coming back, and it's sort of, there's a resurgence of it or whatever. It all came on the back of, I think, painters actually taking on the role as almost like spokespeople for the medium, and they had to really push the conceptual side of it and the content, and it was that's great. I thought that was great because it did get people thinking about how diverse and significant and important painting could be if it was current, and it was responding to things that, you know, it was more, it was still strong as a medium, and I think those guys did do that. You know, all those like Luke Toyman's, of course, but you know, before him, you know, like Gerhard Richter, and I mean, there's so many great artists like that have opened the door. Yeah, I mean, and had people, I guess, attached to their work that gave it a real importance as well. I think that's what kind of turned the tables, and you know, because they were, you know, the way they put things together, like using, you know, filmic devices and like all types of compositional, you know, ways of, you know, just ways of representing things. I think that all just, it was like the door just opened again. You know.
Now you're probably, to most people, come into their conscience as an artist, you know, I'm talking about the broader population, with the two major prizes that you've won, which was the Doug Moran in 2014 and the Archibald in 2015. Yeah. And tell me a bit about there's a narrative around this, isn't there?
Around the Archibald, or
around the Doug Moran and the Archibald.
Well, the Doug Moran sort of came from an experience, you know, that after my pop died, my grandfather, I met a guy who just turned up at his, like my pop, pretty lived a solitary sort of life. He just like sit in the kitchen and cook, and then he'd go over and have a beer at the New South Wales League Club. Catch the ferry across. And then we'd hear him come back on a Saturday night just really pissed, we'd be in bed and you'd just hear his bang. He'd be like walking down the hallway just smashing into things. But it was we just did, like, he never spoke really about his social life or anything, and so he did talk about one of his mates, Paddy, who we'd catch up with. And so at his funeral, we all kind of, as his grandkids, we all thought, oh, this Paddy guy's he's just a figment of our pop's imagination.
So he was kind of like this, fabled character.
And it was like he was using this Paddy as a way of just going out and just getting absolute line.
I'm with Paddy.
No, I've caught up with Paddy. We catch up every Saturday, and we were like, okay, that's good. Say hello to Paddy for us. But anyway, when he died, no friends. Paddy turned up. Like, this guy turned up, this Irish fella, and he just talked about our pop and talked about these times he'd meet up with him, and so it kind of like, he thought, that's cool. Like, we don't even know how he found out that he died, but and I remember sort of just, I don't think he was even aware of it, but when he was I think he was sort of sitting down, because he was quite old, I just sort of did a few drawings of him. And then it was after that I did the painting. Like a few years, I think, later, but I had all the tools just to kind of go for it.
The black tie, the white shirt, was that how he appeared at the funeral?
I think he was, he might have been wearing a red tie, and his hair was a bit more sort of scruffy, and he was, it was like, I'm not a photographic realist, so. But I had enough information,
like a guy going to a funeral.
I had enough information there to kind of like, know that it was someone that I'd met, and I could understand, like, I could see an aspect of his character coming out in the painting. Like that. I guess if I painted it in any other way, I wouldn't feel that. Or see it when I look at it. But that was, I won that. 2014. It was just, prize, putting a painting in a prize or whatever. It really was just to enjoy the showing with other artists. Because it is a solitary sort of thing, and you don't necessarily get to show with so many different artists otherwise.
It's funny, I interviewed just yesterday. And he was talking about, because he's been in a few prizes, he's shortlisted at the moment for the Doug Moran. And we were talking about how it's almost like prizes are like, it's almost like a sample of something that you put, do you know what I mean? Like,
it's sort of like a
it's like a single out of your album.
It is. It's like almost like a demo.
Or
like a little clip from a demo or something. But I think with the way I entered them, I already it was part of what I was doing. And like, I haven't gone in, the Archibald or the Doug Moran since, but it was like,
had you showed in them before? Did you show in the Doug Moran before?
I did twice before. I did like a self-portrait on each occasion, and then with the Archibald I painted Kerry. And then I painted Adam one year, Adam Cullen. Like, that was the first time I went in, and it was because I think he was saying to me at the time, oh mate, it's like 10 years or something since he won the Archibald.
It's 2000, wasn't it?
I think so. And so he said, oh, it's 10 years since I won, like, I want to enter it, why don't you paint me, and it'll be kind of cool. and but I was sort of hanging out with him a bit, and I was going up there, and so it was good that it got in, and but it's not really. I don't think it's that. It's good if you win something because you get money to be able to continue painting and doing things, but I don't know if it's like hasn't really done much. Doesn't change how you work or anything.
I suppose it makes you it. I think what it does, and I think this is kind of what it did for Adam as well. I think that what it does, it kind of creates a public consciousness and almost like and I hate this word, but like a brand for the artist. You then kind of everyone then knew Adam. The guy who painted David Wenham, blah blah blah. So I think that then people get, like, when I say people, I mean the general population get an idea of what your work is about.
Yeah, I guess
it's also a snapshot as well. It's
I mean, and plus it's also like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think Adam really, like, I just really wanted to get back and do my own thing, and I mean, I'm not someone like who I didn't use it as a platform to build a kind of a public image or public kind of persona or anything, because it's not really.
That's just what happens though, as a kind of a
byproduct of it. And you can get pulled into that, and where you kind of like feel you have to or something. But I mean, I just wanted to get back to my work and and get back to what, because I mean, as a general rule, I guess, not a lot of people find not respond to my work in a positive way, because it's sort of, they see it as being really dark and heavy, so it didn't bring any new interest, I don't think, in my work, but maybe it just showed that more people saw it for what it was, or they looked at it, but didn't mean it was liked any better or any worse. It just meant that it was seen in a broader light by more people.